the opportunities are endless, especially with a mobile-based technology, a platform which allows for not just lead users to discover new applications, but also for them to take it on and in a sort of what we call network effect, develop new businesses around the platform on their own. The big success story has been Africa in terms of Kenya. It's also been used very successfully in Afghanistan, where what's interesting there is the business model that was successful, or the service business model in Afghanistan, was the actual raison d'etre initially as to why M-Pesa was started, which was to help to support microloans and for those involved with microfinance. What happened with M-Pesa was the sense was that with Gremlin banks being so successful in 2005, that obviously microloans was the business model that and the need that consumers would have. But actually, in reality, what they found on the ground as they started to deploy the infrastructure was that it wasn't getting quite the take-up that they'd expected for supporting microloans. They found that the groups, which were the microfinance institute groups around Faulu, where there was some interest, but actually the way in which those groups work as a social support, the peer-to-peer nature of the mobile technology between people was seen to be somewhat disruptive for how those groups very successfully have functioned. The other very interesting thing that they found was that when they started to have a more of a, what I'd call a service-centric thinking around the customer, was that the customer had very different value propositions than, at least in Kenya at that time, than a microloan support. They found that when people on the ground from Sagentia and Vodafone worked with local subsidiaries, Safaricom and the different groups in Kenya, they saw that customers had a great need for things that we don't see a great need for. They don't have bank accounts. They don't have safe, convenient ways of getting money. Even 20, 30 miles can be a few hours or a few days in some cases to get that money. And often you have to pay commissions, or there's a safety hazard, so the money doesn't even get there. So there were very basic needs. And because there was this lack of inclusion, financial inclusion, with no bank accounts, what did help was that 70%, even at that time, had access to mobile phones. And so that great combination of a huge need for transferring money or for finance, as well as having the ability to use a mobile platform, was magic. Bang, came together. What really attracted me was the way in which, in this particular instance, you had a very large company, Vodafone, who had an interesting CSR initiative looking at partnering with a small Silicon Fen, Cambridge-based company, Sagentia, to deploy and partner with Safaricom, in this case in Kenya. 2/3 of the GDP is in services these days, so it's a huge opportunity for companies to grow. Just look at IBM with PwC. They seem to have been able to get that merger or acquisition working well. HP with EDS. So many large companies are looking at ways to grow through services. I was interested in the question of how do large companies get the support of small companies around the Silicon Fen to deploy and grow services in emerging economies, so that it would be meeting needs of people in the emerging economies and perhaps over time not just being a CSR initiative, but growing into a real business unit, which is exactly what happened with M-Pesa. I do believe that it is a huge vehicle. It's not just for finance. Healthcare is another big area. We've been doing some work with China Mobile, looking at how they might look at the use of mobile technology to support healthcare, payment of nurses or other allied workers in distant parts of rural China. Even simple things, which even in the UK are critical, like trying to give reminders for appointments, just to get efficiency in the healthcare system, to remind people. These are all things which, because again, across all countries, many countries, 70% or more of the population have mobile phones, the platform accessibility is key to the success of using it effectively for innovation and for facilitating services. The opportunities are endless, especially with a mobile-based technology, a platform which allows for not just lead users to discover new applications, but also for them to take it on and in a sort of what we call network effect, develop new businesses around the platform on their own, improvising, experimenting, being creative. And of course, we know in Africa and other parts of the developing world, there's a lot of creativity out there. And of course, necessity is the mother of invention. So where there is need, there will be a thriving, interesting, creative way of developing new innovations. So as you say, paying salaries, paying school fees, setting up and linking to the internet to deliver flowers. These are, and many other applications have arisen. You've got also the potential for the mobile infrastructure to be connected in to the main other, well, more conventional, I should say, it's not main, the ATMs, the banking. Because if you think what's happened with M-Pesa in Kenya, you've got 17,000 or more now kiosks, mom and pop shops that used to sell airtime that now sell or provide the service for transferring money. And that rose up overnight because of that install base of people already doing the actual airtime selling. But you've only got 500, 600 banks across the whole of Kenya. But what has happened is that over time there have been new innovations that have now linked the M-Pesa product to ATMs, to the banks. So you're interoperating and creating a wider infrastructure of both use for consumers, allowing them now even access into some of the services of banks like savings accounts because of their initial access through the M-Pesa platform. Think about Kenya for the minute. You know, you've moved from 10% of people having bank accounts and therefore access to basic financial services to now the order of magnitude of 50 to 60% using M-Pesa. So tremendous growth. The potential is endless. If you think of the internet, you're really seeing the next internet here, where you'll be seeing some really interesting applications which are thriving. As I mentioned earlier, going into healthcare, the use of the way in which mobile technology can be used. Even in the UK, for example, Ping It just came out under Barclays, which for a long time searching for a solution, how could mobile finance be relevant, where everybody has bank accounts. Well, the Ping It application is simply saying there is a need for convenience. And you think about going to a restaurant with 3 friends. You always have the issue of who pays what. Yeah. And what can we do about that? Well, with Ping It, essentially you can access and deposit your share of the restaurant bill into the different bank accounts of people around the table that you're having a meal with. There are some issues with registration of the accounts, how long it will take to be done properly. There are issues of security, but these are all things which can be over I would say, the short to medium term solvable to make mobile-based applications not just a thing for Africa or Kenya, but certainly a thing that helps us in specific areas to provide ease and convenience and take up of mobile finance in the UK and beyond.